Morning, guys, on another swelteringly hot British summer's day. I'm coming to you after I've had a little browse on the internet, catching up with some various news and stuff, and I come across some gaming news. This article here from Variety. I don't know this website, but it just came up on Google first page. I typed in on gaming news. This was one of the first articles actually. It's a couple of days old on June 29th, so I'm a little late getting to it. But what I saw worried me. We'll go through this. I had a little skim through, so I know what's in the article. But basically, inside the ADL's plans to take on Gamergate, hating gaming. Gamergate is old news. It's old hack. The SJWs came for gaming. Was it like 4 years ago now? And we managed to hold fast as a whole, as a community, and push them away. They've since infected Hollywood, comics, various other places, and they seem to be everywhere like roaches, red roaches. But the ADL is not something I've heard of, actually, funnily enough. I thought I would have heard of it having read this, but as it says here, we'll dive straight on into the article. The Anti-Defamation League is what the ADL is. I'm guessing it's basically, from what I gather, it's like an SJW organisation fighting against hate and for equality, kind of that nonsense, but not actually thinking straight or using logic. You'll see as we go through. Is taking its fight against hate to the world of video games. Yay! Fight the hate! Starting with supporting and training game developers in hopes of eventually reaching the massive 2.6 billion person gaming audience. An ever-growing gaming audience. Now the grannies are out with their Wiis and their Wii U's and their Switches. I still haven't got a Switch. I really want to get one, but the price is still putting me off on that. The ADL has worked in digital environments since 1985. So it's been set up as like a anti-discrimination kind of thing for digital environments is what I gather. Said Daniel Kelly, Associate Director of the Centre for Technology and Society at the ADL. We've been on bulletin boards, websites and social media. Well, I've never seen you, mate, so you're... Your advertising can't be that great. You need to put a little bit more effort into that. I feel like it's a natural evolution for us starting to think through, what does a digital environment mean? Games are a huge part of that. It's not just Twitter and Facebook. Fortnite is a platform. League of Legends is a platform. No, Daniel. They're not platforms. They are games. They are played on platforms like PS4. No, I'm joking. They're not platforms. They're forms of media that people would like to enjoy. Keyword there, enjoy. And I fear what you're doing is trying to take fun away from these things. They're not Twitter and Facebook. They're nothing like Twitter and Facebook. Oh. Right, Cyber Centre. The ADL Centre for Technology and Society was announced in 2015. But didn't formally launch until last year. In October, the group was working with the Museum of Art and Digital and Entertainment in California on a project when they were introduced to the idea of a game jam. Kelly said the ADL decided to run a game jam based on anti-bias education. Oh god, trigger words. Trigger warning for anybody with sense. Anti-bias is another way of saying promote not I can't speak today. Promote minorities, in general anyway. The jam resulted in 33 games and so impressed the group that they started to look into using the approach on a broader scale. It also kicked off a more in-depth look into the world of gaming and game development. Please stay away from our games. It's like the one bit of escapism now, apart from books, but not many people read books anymore. Do pick up a book every now and again. It's good. A nice fresh paperback. None of that Kindle nonsense. Actually have a book in your hand. I'm a bit old school like that. Kelly said he started having informal discussions with groups like the International Game Developers Association, Playcrafting, Games for Change, and schools like NYU. Okay, well, the only big worrying one there is the Game Developers Association. The rest of them, not that important. He said he found a group of people who had a real hunger for engagement from the ADL. I doubt that, my friend, to address some of the problems in games. We did a listening tour of different folks. Folks. As a British person, I can't say that word very well. Folks. Academics, practitioners, others, he said. We read a lot about Gamergate. Well, yeah, I'm sure you did. In the press and about the harassment. Yeah, but the harassment was from a minority. It's more of the outcry that we had from the community, which was justified. But we wanted to hear from the community about what the problems are at the ADL that the ADL can help with. We don't need you to sort out any problems, mate. Our biggest problems are loot boxes, microtransactions and DLC. That's all we need to deal with as a gaming community. We don't need your politics in it, thank you. That led to a summit of sorts at GDC with special interest groups. The ADL found there were 3 prongs of gaming they could address: the culture in which games are made, the culture of players, and the games themselves. So they're already strategizing how to take the fun out of our games, how to strip them, make them bland. Sorry excuses for entertainment. They won't kill it. The gaming community is strong. The force is strong with us. We'll be fine. They decided that working with the culture in which games are made was the best way to move the needle on combating the larger issue. Yeah, it's probably the easiest way for them because they're not going to change gamers' minds. They don't have enough money to make games, so all they can do is harass, harangue, and corral the game developers. The concept is that if the culture in which games are made can be improved, that could in turn lead to more responsible games and then perhaps impact the people who play them. This I don't understand. The culture in which games are made, what are you referring to? If you're referring to the culture, the atmosphere of the people making the games, I mean, that doesn't really have a reflection on the game itself. It's a bit of airy-fairy, not very definitive phrase you've got there. The idea is that there is a multiplier effect for engaging a game developer, Kelly said. They have a tremendous reach across the game community and have a broader impact. They also can make massive mistakes and be held at gunpoint by the gaming community, as we've seen many times over the past years. I mean, look at EA, under the gun at the moment. They're still doing well money-wise, but they've lost all respect from the gaming community, hardcore gamers especially. So yeah, I mean, you can get a good effect from a game developer. One, it depends which one it is, which I think the respected ones aren't going to even lend you an ear, and only the bigger ones are going to have an impact, really. Kelly is quick to point out that the issues ADL seeks to address in gaming, issues of bias, hate and harassment, where? I mean, if you can give me examples, that would be good. Aren't unique to gaming. No, they're not even a problem in gaming, really. I mean, the worst I've ever had in gaming is when I hate to say this, I used to play Call of Duty, I don't know, about 5 games ago. We're talking Call of Duty Black Ops, the first one. I think that's about when I stopped. The worst kind of abuse is you'd get a 10-year-old swearing at you down a microphone, but you have a mute button, you press that, all is well and good with the world. I've not experienced bias, hate or harassment from any single player game. I'm assuming they're targeting multiplayer, but it's very easy to cut that out. There's not any need for you, ADL, to get involved in games. A lot of these problems are part of systemic problems, not just part of the gaming community. Systemic problems. So you're linking this to society. I could see that coming a mile off. As the SJW you are, you are linking it to societal problems. And you're basically saying, oh, well, there's problems in society, so therefore gaming has got massive problems as well. Gaming is an escape from society. It's escape from politics. It's escape from bias, hate, and harassment. I got bullied as a kid. Going to play a game made me feel better. And now you're trying to take some of those things away from us. That fantasy, the escapism. Games for change. Ugh. I shudder every time I see these things. The ADL hasn't yet solidified how it will address some of these issues inside game development studios and with publishers, because I don't think they really have a plan, to be quite honest. Not one that's going to be listened to by developers, because developers want to make money. They're businesses. They're not going to promote this really odd, no bias sort of equality, positive discrimination within their games if they're not going to sell them because of that. I mean, you look at things like the women being included in some of the more historically accurate war games. I know there was a big backlash against Battlefield. It doesn't make a massive difference to the game itself having female characters, but it doesn't make any sense either. It just doesn't make any sense because women were never on the front line. I mean, the game can still be fun, it can still be enjoyed. If you're into that kind of game, I doubt it would put you off, but I don't see the need to put them in there. I don't think female gamers were even crying out for that. I've never heard that. Right, where were we? I've lost my place now. We are experimenting, trying to see what that looks like. Talking to game companies and other entities, he said. On Friday, Karen Schreier, the director of games at Marist College, will discuss one of those experiments during a Games for Change panel about fostering empathy and decision-making through games. So you're trying to brainwash people through gaming into being more empathetic, I guess. People, I mean, I'm naturally quite empathetic anyway. I'm quite a empathetic, emotional person. I don't know if you should own up to that, being a bloke, but I am. I don't think a game's going to change that part of you anyway. I don't know why you'd want to try and do that, ADL. What is your goal? It's like a conspiracy. The ADL is also in the process of putting together a framework for another game jam later this year. I mean, that's all well and good. If you want to promote your stuff, do game jams and stuff like that. Get people to make their own games. People that are interested will come along. But I don't like them going into the industry and targeting game developers to try and influence the games that they're selling us. I mean, this could be some of our bigger franchises. They're trying to push back against things. And when you get a backlash, these developers and that, they possibly will change their games just to suit these things because they don't want the bad press. We are going to focus on the building blocks, starting with identity issues, and have folks talk about what identity means and how that can be expressed in a game. It doesn't need to be expressed in a game, Kelly. It really doesn't. You can be a giant green gelatinous alien. That's got nothing to do with identity. I know there's ones closer to home where you can play as... Oh no, this game I can only choose to be different shades of a white person. Therefore, it's racist. You don't need... I don't care if I'm playing a game where I'm a black character because I'm a white guy. It doesn't make a difference to me. As long as the characters are good, well developed, as I've said before on these types of things, good characters, well developed, good story, you will hear no complaints for any sane gamer. The ADL works... Oh no, here we go. Ooh, I've missed a bit. But it's not one and done. It's a lifelong process of becoming aware of ways in which bias is part of our lives. It's not. You're making these things up. We are not biased. The most normal people are not biased towards people because of their sex, gender, race, religion. They just aren't. Bias is the largest base level of what the ADL calls the pyramid of hate. that, that definitely sounds like the end level of a JRPG in a game. I'll give you that. We'll scale the pyramid of hate and take down the Nazi at the top of it. Oh, do excuse me. I didn't expect that to pop up. The pyramid's next level is acts of bias, then discrimination, a bias-motivated violence, and finally genocide. Oh my god. Guys, I don't think we're going to get to genocide through gaming. Oh god. Oh, I didn't think I'd get such a good laugh in the morning. Oh, okay. Okay. Discrimination upwards. This level here that's actual bias. I mean, they're things we don't want. We don't want people to be discriminated against. We don't want we don't want any violence. I don't care if it's bias motivated, but we don't want any violence, and we definitely don't want genocide. Bias is the largest base level. Yeah, well, acts of bias is very vague, airy-fairy wording again. I mean, you can't really define that. Proper discrimination doesn't really happen at all anymore, and it's against the law anyway. Violence is most definitely against the law, and genocide has been frowned upon for a very long time. Only in certain sectors of society, though. The ADL works at every level. I'm assuming you don't mean the level of the pyramid. You're not combating genocide, are you? Kelly said, education is proactive, starting at the base level of the pyramid. Education is at school, not in games. Educational games have historically been very, very poor and poorly received. The approach the ADL plans to use in video games is similar to what it used in schools, where they trained principals and teachers who then passed on those lessons to students. Oh, that's a worrying sign. Americans, watch out. If they're doing that in your schools, I'd be careful. The group plans to work with the NYU Game Center to create a course this fall that will incorporate the ADL's work on game-related media designed for impact. They're also working with the IGDA to create new developer-focused programming to fight hate and bias in the gaming community. Wait, what? Developer-focused programming to fight hate? Are these bots? Are you talking about bots? I don't know. I don't understand that. That's a bit ominous, though. Okay. Finally, Kelly said, it makes sure to be more proactive. Okay, that's not a sentence. About being more vocal in its support of people working to make games better, and to call out those who misuse gaming platforms to proliferate hate and bigotry. You can't how are people how are this? Give me an example. And to call out those who misuse gaming platforms to proliferate hate and bigotry. I don't understand. Who is doing this? People are free. If you're a game developer, you're free to make whatever game you want. If you make a game, if you're a Nazi killing people, I mean, you're free to do that. I don't think it's be the most popular game. It's more about the mechanics and that rather than the premise. But what? That doesn't happen. Oh, if you're talking about the gaming community, how do they do that? All right. While this is the start of the ADL's deeper dive, actually, speaking of this, I have to go to a little anecdote of my own. Actually, I once got into an argument online with about a similar subject. It was about women in gaming, actually, and some lady I was sort of arguing back and forth with, no word of a lie, likened being teabagged in a game to sexual harassment, and that she was genuinely scarred by being teabagged. Oh dear, that I wish that wasn't true, but I actually got quite viciously attacked for that as well, because I wouldn't concede the point to her. I just denied that it was anything to do with that. Whilst this is, so this is about Gamergate. Whilst this is the ADL's deeper start of the ADL's deeper dive into issues of hate and harassment. Oh, pizza. World Cup pizza. I'm quite hungry. It's not the first time the group addressed those issues. In 2016, the ADL flew 5 national experts in online hate to Austin for SXSW's. Oh, let's try saying that 3 times fast. First online harassment summit, an event created in the wake of Gamergate. Gamergate, Kelly said, remains an issue still today. 4 years after it kicked off, Gamergate arose in 2014, ostensibly over concerns about ethics in game journalism. Some Doritos. I could really use a packet of Doritos right now. Yeah, this was the main thing that came out of it, and it's a good thing that it did, because it was awful. People getting paid off. I mean, it still happens today, I'm sure, far more often than not, but we're a bit more savvy to it. And quickly coalesced into a group of self-identified members whose concerns expanded to include the rise of what they labelled PC culture and social justice warriors. And this is a problem. It's what I'm going through now, and it's what I've made a few videos on already, and it's not just infecting gaming, which we managed to fight back before, it's infecting all forms of media and entertainment. Things we want to enjoy and not be politicised. You can have your own views on these things, but we don't want it injected into our media. And we need to stand firm on this, and that's fine. It's just been awful recently, everywhere. The BBC news website, there's some bad articles, and their news, just watching it normally, is awful. The more vocal of the group typically harass people, more often women and minorities, who question some of the status quo of game content in the video game industry. So if you're talking about Anita Sarkeesian, I don't condone harassing anyone, but she does bring it upon herself a little. She does say some silly things. She deserves criticism, but not harassment. And it depends what you decide harassment is. I mean, it also says the more vocal of the group. So you're saying only, that means a small portion, basically. So a small portion of the group typically harass people. Harassment could be anything. You could tell them they're wrong, and some people will cry and say you've harassed them because you're saying that they're wrong. More often women and minorities. So again, generalising, more often it's women and minorities, but not always. Sometimes it's the other. Who questions some of the status quo of game content in the video game industry. If you mean busty ladies and not as many, I don't know, not as good racial diversity as there could be. I mean, I don't see a massive problem with the gaming industry as it is anyway. I mean, there's room for busty girls, there's room for diversity. As long as you're making a good game, it's gonna sell. The more, yeah, we've been through that. Gamergate harassment is most often sparked by the expansion of gaming content, settings and characters to include more women, minorities and the examination of modern social issues. This here is not a good thing. That's political. People, like I've said repeatedly in this video, we don't want politics in games. We don't want it in any media that we consume for entertainment and escapism. Please do not force your reality upon us for the hour that we get to spend on a game per day. If you do that, that's more. No, I don't even game that much anymore. I'm still a pretty hardcore gamer though. I've got no problem with including more women if you want, as long as it's not forced. Oh, there's plenty of women in games. What are you talking about? Horizon Zero Dawn, Tomb Raider. There's loads. I don't think that's a problem. I know there's been uproar about women in the war games, but that, I mean, it's kind of justified in a way. It doesn't really affect the gameplay, but it doesn't make any sense. They're just doing it for the sake of doing it, to seem like they're being more fair to genders. Same with minorities. As long as it's suitable for the game and it's not just a character is a minority for the sake of being a minority and for the sake of diversity, then that's fine. Earlier this year, Kelly wrote a post for the ADL's blog about using video games to reduce bias and fight hate. No, they shouldn't be used to do that. They should be used to have fun and make people feel good. Please. That's the only reason. That's the only reason they're there. In it, he mentioned Gamergate once. The result was a wave of vitriolic responses. He said, prior to posting it, I sent it to colleagues in the gaming community, and they said, you're writing about Gamergate. Look out, there's going to be a pile-on. Well, yeah, Gamergate was a big thing, and people weren't happy about it. I don't know what was said to him. I mean, if they're insulting him and his family, then yeah, you can't really do that. But again, criticism, where if you can't take the criticism, then don't post it. That speaks to the seriousness in which hate bias and harassment in games is impacting people. It's not. They were people who were sending you absolutely horrible, hateful messages, telling you to die, threatening you and your family. That's not because they are playing games. That's because they are a bit fucked up. The same reason you're trying to put politics in our games is because you're a bit fucked up and you see the world from a very strange point of view. From our discussions with people in the industry, Gamergate isn't over. It is over, you're just continuing it, you're dragging it out. It's the return of Gamergate. It remains a significant problem, part of a serious issue that needs to be taken seriously, and the ADL takes it seriously. He added, it impacts people's lives, impacts a person's ability to do their job. No, it doesn't. You're spouting rubbish. This impacts whose lives, impacts what person's ability to do their job. You? I don't think this is going to affect people. Common sense. I'm very worried about this. I don't want it to turn... It's something I'm going to keep an eye on. I don't want it to turn into another Gamergate. I don't want it to turn into another SJW attack on the gaming industry, which... I mean, the gaming community... I'm a gamer. That's what I define myself as. That's been my hobby since I was a kid. And I don't want it to be ruined like Hollywood and comics have. And what we need to do as a community, all of us, band together and say no. No. We don't want your PC, SJW, craziness infecting our games. And we will not buy them if you put it in there. Like The Last of Us 2, which I am worried about but I have not condemned yet. If that turns out to be an SJW propaganda all about Ellie being a lesbian and Joel's gone off and died in a corner when he was one of the greatest characters in there. He had such a great story arc. I liked Ellie as well. I know some people didn't, but I did like her story as well. It worries me. But we've got to stand up together, guys, as a community, and fight the hate, as they say. Anyway, it was nice to catch up with you again. I'll keep you posted. I'll see you guys next time.